Hey there everybody, it's Mark Curley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be doing a lesson on how to draw Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan, or Shingeki no Kyojin. And I've had a lot of requests for this character, so let's not waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and get into it. All right, well, we've got some basic guidelines in place here for the pose. Something to keep an eye out for is the size of the head, the width of it compared to the shoulders. Quite large, really, compared to real human proportions. And the length of the neck, also important to get that distance in there correct. Try to get these guidelines as well in the proper place on the head there so that we can get the eyes and nose and so forth right where they need to be. Well, let's go ahead and zoom in a little as I move on to some more refined guidelines. Okay, so we have some of the basic guidelines in place for the face. I'm going to go ahead and go back in here and erase a little of that guideline for the skull. Which sounds evil. I'm erasing his skull. But get rid of these initial guidelines that did help in terms of placing the different features. Notice that the eyebrows were the lines that touched that initial sort of horizontal guideline I'd put in there. The eyes themselves, or the irises of the eyes, are just a touch below it. But the nose and the mouth do indeed touch right upon this vertical line. And yeah, this is, there's going to be quite a lot to cover in this lesson, so I'm hesitant to go line by line, real time throughout everything. But maybe I can just show you a little bit of real-time stuff as I add a bit more refinement to these lines. Refinement, yes, a bit more refinement. We have to add to these lines. These basic guidelines just remind me of where this part is. His hair does sort of part down the middle. And I'm going to get like an extra strand up here just to sort of liven things up a bit. But comparing different illustrations, it seemed that most of the artists agree that his hair falls fairly flat upon his head. It's not spiking up too much. In any case, I wanted you to see a little bit of this. How about if I do real time, just a little more refining of the eyes here. This first eye is a little closer to us, so we're going to see a little more of it, as is the case with almost all manga eyes that I see. We're not drawing an entire line all the way around the eye. We don't see the tear duct. Tends to be a line for the upper eyelid and a line for the lower eyelid. And then over here we're going to try to reproduce that. A lot of times you're struggling with getting the irises in just the right place so that he looks focused but not cross-eyed. And certainly we don't want him to look wall-eyed, which comes from placing the irises too much to, the outside edges of the eyes. Anyway, that's if you struggle with that, you are not alone. I also struggle with that a bit myself. And I'm going to go ahead and drop in just the pupil here in the middle of each iris. And that alone begins to get us closer to the real look of his face. Anyway, let's keep moving on then. I'm going to do in time-lapse slightly more refined guidelines for the neck and start to get into the details of his clothing, which are very detailed indeed. I don't know how much of that we're going to be able to cover completely or very thoroughly in this video, but I'll try to get as much of it in as I can. Anyway, let's go on to some of the secondary guidelines. All right, well, you can see that his collar is quite large, quite broad, and it goes, very vertically up in this area. I just realized now that I've got, the camera is in so tight that we can't see a whole heck of a lot of, the rest of his costuming. So I'm going to have to refocus, but I guess I thought I would just sort of pause here for a moment and erase some of these initial guidelines. Then I'll refocus the camera, and we'll go ahead and draw the rest of his, costuming before we start moving on to more of the real details of this illustration. Okay, well, I'm going to knock it off with the time-lapse for a while and try to do more of this real-time. I'm erasing the basic guidelines here that were, you know, the skeletal structure underneath all of this, allowing me to sort of figure out the pose and know where to put these final guidelines. And what I've started to do here is to get some of the details of his costuming into place. It really is interesting, the uniform that these characters wear. It all seems to have been very carefully worked out in terms of these belts and so forth. Notice how high up the jacket goes. Is there a special word for this kind of jacket that's cut so high above the waist? Not really sure, as usual, what the terminology is for any of this stuff. But you can see that I drew a couple of lines here that indicate this belt going across his upper chest. And there really is this whole sort of network of belts, suspenders, maybe they would be. And down here you can see them coming across. There is a buckle here where this suspender-like strap reaches the belt. There's, of course, a rectangular buckle right in the center, as there so often is with belts, even here in the real world. And if you want to get really persnickety about the details, it appears that there should be two of these little clasps, you know, that go through the belt to hold the buckle in place. And then so you've got these separate buckles for where these suspender-like straps occur, so you have to get those on both sides. He's turned a little bit away from us, so we can't entirely see this other suspender-like thing. One of the really interesting things about this costuming is this cloth that goes around the waist. And I confess, I do not know the backstory and so many of the details of Attack on Titan to explain what this is all about, but it is sort of interesting that they've got this dark brownish cloth that goes right around the waist, and only around the waist, it seems to me. Oh, and then there's I had real trouble in the illustrations seeing what this is back here, but it attaches to the belt in it's a slightly larger thingamababa doohickey here in the back. But yeah, if you want to draw this character, Eren from Attack on Titan, you're going to have to pay real close attention to the details of the costuming, because as I said, it all seems to be just so. Like they you know, put a lot of time into figuring out the details. And up here, there is it's a little bit open at the collar, and you're going to have a few strands. Sort of X marks the spot up there of string, as well as the pull strings. Is that what this is called? That comes out of the top. And all these little extra details just complete the drawing. Now, there is this emblem of the sort of elite corps that he is a member of, goes on the pocket here. I guess I'll do one of these real time, and then the one that's on his shoulder I'm going to do time lapse. So let's do this one real time. In fact, let me zoom in because it's quite detailed. All right, so basically just a fairly ordinary pocket we've got going on up here with a single button. But there is a patch here that I believe is the emblem of, you know, the corps that he's a member of that battles these giants. It's a very cool concept. I confess I haven't been so busy with my work. I haven't really caught up with Attack on Titan, but I had a quick look at you know, the sort of intro to the series. And I love the concept of this walled city. You can see that I started to do a background before I even began the video showing the walled city, which I think is a very cool concept. Like they had to build this gigantic wall around the city to protect the people from these enormous, grotesque giants that eat human beings alive. Anyway, you have a couple of swords here crossing over, and if you want attention to detail, it seems like the one on the right crosses over the one on the left. And then behind it is this sort of shield, and it's a fairly basic design. It has a kind of a cross. It's divided into these 4 quadrants. And there you have the sort of design of the patch. And I hope you enjoyed drawing that, because you're going to have to draw it all over again up here on the shoulder. I'm going to do this in time-lapse just to save a little time. Okay, one more thing that I can do while we're zoomed in close here is to show that there are even details up here on this strap that goes across the shoulder. Seems like there's a couple of lines here, and then the button that holds that in place right there. Now I'm going to refocus or pull the camera back so that we can draw a few more of the wrinkles in the clothing, and then we can start to move on to the inking process, hopefully. So yeah, once you've got the details of the clothing in place, I think you can really take your drawing to another level by adding clothing folds that tend to aggregate, congregate, assimilate in the elbow region, and maybe just a few up here near the shoulder. But it seems to me most of the time I see artists drawing them mainly at the elbows. And maybe just a little bit down near the cuff as well. I keep adding extra things. It's only at the elbows. Well, maybe a little, and just a little extra here. Anyway, I conveniently have made the hands a little bit off screen, so we don't have to deal with that. There is only so much we can draw in one video, people. But I'm going to get some wrinkles going across his abdomen here. And notice that I've chosen to make them go sort of along the surface of his body, sort of cooperating with conveying, you know, the way he's turned away from us. Having these lines curve like this, it helps to convey his form. Whereas if I just made them straight up and down or straight side to side, I don't think it would do that job of you know, helping to convey the surface of his chest. And let's see if there's anything else. Oh, like as I said, they tend to be at the elbow. And having got that in place, it may be time to move on to the inking. Now, I have a rather unusual, I dare say, idea with this video. I am going to try to combine, for the first time on any stage, I'm going to try to combine old school Zip-A-Tone for the foreground with a bit of watercolor maybe in the background, and see what that looks like. I've never really attempted that before. It's fairly unorthodox. But I always like to try new things, and we'll see how it works. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick it into time-lapse to take care of the inking process, and then we'll be back to do some of this old-school Zip-A-Tone. Some of you may remember I did a video a while back that showed the way that they applied gray tones in the old days, and maybe some people still do in Japan right now. I'm going to go ahead and bring that out for this video. But first, let's get the inking done. Okay, so we've got the inking done, and I'm using my kneaded eraser to get rid of the original pencil lines. And before I move on to the gray toning stuff, which I'm going to do mostly in time-lapse, I actually realized, studying the original artwork from the manga, that the hair is generally not gray-toned. It's actually done with straight-up black ink. So I'm going to go in with just a Sharpie here and start to make the hair largely black, although I'm going to leave some little white spots as highlights, which is also something that I see them doing in the original manga. But let's go ahead and finish this part up in time-lapse, and then we can finally do some of the gray toning. All right, well, I've got the hair all blackened in. You can see I left just a few little white spots here and there to be the highlights. And now it is time to pull out the classic Zipatone. This is still the same sheet that I brought back from Japan. You can see the sort of dot pattern on here. And what I'm going to try to do is place it so that the this gradient, change from light gray to dark gray occurs on his jacket here, and sort of adds a bit of an effect of roundedness, or of a shadow forming on his left-hand side here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out a piece here, maybe do just a little bit of it real time, but of course most of it will have to be done time-lapse. Okay, so here's this piece that I've sort of custom cut to fit over his clothing. And let's pull out it has adhesive on it that sort of holds it in place. And I'm going to go ahead and bring out my X-Acto knife here, and maybe I can show just a part of this real-time, fairly complicated contour that he's going to have here. But, yeah, I think just for the purposes of demonstration, I will cut along this one side of his jacket, hopefully cutting precise enough that when I remove the rest of the film, you'll be able to get an idea of how people did this back in the day. See that? Yeah, there we go. So that gives you some sense of how this is done, but yeah, like I said, I'm going to have to do most of this time-lapse. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back. Okay, well, there I've added on that Zipatone. I know a lot of people are going to ask, where can you get that stuff? And, depending on where you live, sadly, the answer may be nowhere. Pretty hard to get hold of Zipatone these days. I know in Japan it's pretty widely available. In the United States, you may have to look on the internet and, screen tones. See if you can find some. But what I want to do, as I said, is to do a little bit of an experiment and use watercolor grays in the background here. See if combining the two things, what kind of an effect that has. Who knows, it may be a complete disaster. And you'll see it happen right here in this video. But I'm going to do it anyway. Let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, well, there's my video on drawing Eren Yeager. I hope you found it useful. It was kind of unusual to blend these two different techniques at the end, the crisp line work of the inking with the pencil watercolor background. I kind of had fun doing it. I sort of like the look. Let me know what you thought of it. I might try it again sometime. But let's go ahead and thank anyone who's helped me by getting any of my books. We got the Brody's Ghost and the Miki Falls graphic novel series, as well as Mastering Manga 1 and 2. And look what we have here. Yes, it's Dominar el Manga, the Spanish language edition of Mastering Manga 1, also available in Polish, Chinese, French, German, a number of other languages. But let's go ahead and lay down this pen. I want to thank everyone for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.